Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today marks first segment of our new show. This is a show we all started together. It's going to be called The Turning Point, where the four of us are going to come together once a week and discuss the current trends in finance, digital assets, geopolitics, and the economy at large, because all these topics are intricately connected to the global transition that we're seeing in today's world. Joining me today are my dear brother, Vandell, as you guys know, and my dear friends, Edo and David from Digital Outlook. I'm actually proud to call these individuals my dear friends and trusted sources because they conduct very thorough research and understanding, a very deep understanding of the underlying micro and macro forces that are driving the changes that we see in today's world. So we have a lot of information to discuss, and we're going to get right into it. As you all know, there's a lot happening in the crypto space. We're seeing an acceleration in the development of a new regulatory framework for digital assets. And this is something we've been covering for a very long time, but it's becoming a major talking point in the political arena. And I find that very interesting because we have the upcoming election, right? And recently I posted a video of Majority Whip Tom Emmer discussing the need for a regulatory framework for stablecoins. And for those who are following us very closely, you guys understand that this involves Ripple's technology, which is known as RippleNet, which uses the digital asset XRP to bridge all digital currencies, stablecoins, and even tokenized assets. And it offers a platform for central banks to issue and manage central bank digital currencies if they choose to do so. This technology has certainly been adopted by financial institutions and central banks worldwide, right? It's just interesting again, and that's a big word in the show, that we have been in the accumulation phase, and I think we're in the early stages of a significant bull run in digital assets and asset prices. And that's going to be driven, of course, by the expanding debt market, which is causing the distortion of asset prices. Now, last thing, guys, to get a better perspective on all of this, we're going to be discussing this very thorough, and we're all gentlemen here. So we're going to begin with David, move on to my brother, and then Edo before circling back to myself. So David, please expand on all of this and please share your thoughts, man. This is going to be exciting.
Well, I think that in the landscape that we're in right now, one of the absolute fundamentals has been the whole regulatory clarity piece. It's one of the major pieces that are missing from the, when you talk about, institutional adoption in this space. And primarily a lot of that has to do with, of course, their fiduciary responsibility. A lot of institutions, pension plans, hedge funds, those kind of things, they cannot really touch this space because of its volatility, the way that we have known it to be over the last number of bull runs. But this one is different. It's significantly different. I mean, we have never seen the impacts like we're seeing now in a political race ever before. And in fact, we've just seen some pieces of legislation, which we'll probably touch on later on in this, just going through the House that are seeing a lot of bipartisan support. And, this last bill that went through, FIT 21, well, got 71 Democratic votes on it, even though it was a Republican-led bill. And that tells you a lot. I mean, it tells you a great deal of what's in the mind. They realize, hey, in the United States right now, we've got over 60 million people that have publicly come out and said, we're vested in this digital asset space. Major component of the electorate for sure. And when you see this legislation coming out addressing stable coins, addressing, like what kind of system are we going to move into if in fact there's going to be a CBDC, or if they're not, we know a number of states are trying to get legislation in there to avoid the whole CBDC thing. I don't know how successful that's going to be in the long haul, but needless to say, we're seeing a lot of that. We just watched a clip of Trump coming out there, who not too long ago, remember, was totally against this digital asset space. And right now he's coming out and he's flipping it all over. Oh no, if you vote for me, hey, look, not only are you going to get security for, we're going to make sure that, development can happen here in the United States, but we're going to secure your self custody rights and stuff like that. That's a major, major deal. So you can see this is a big, big part of the political discussion. And that should tell you the temperature, the environment that we're in. We're at a phase now where we're just transitioning into these adoption levels. And I think it will represent ultimately one of the biggest bull runs I think this space will have ever seen. And the reason for that, I think, is this. When I liken this space, I oftentimes will use this example. Most of us are not we're not the trailblazers, the Lewis and Clarks, the guys that went and cut the road, the guys who developed Bitcoin, like the guys who went and developed a lot of these ecosystems. But definitely, I'd say we were early adopters, the pioneers. Now, when back in the day when they were saying, "Hey, go west, young man," right? The pioneer would go west and he'd risk everything. He'd take his wagon, his family, everything. He'd go out there, no roads, no nothing, and then stake a claim and build a homestead kind of thing. Well, what followed those pioneers? Well, what followed the pioneers were a lot of the merchants and stuff like that followed the settlers, and the merchants following the settlers. And who followed the merchants? Well, the big money followed the merchants, right? Because of course, the finance and things like that. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the political will, followed it.
Right.
And what have we seen in this space? Well, we saw when Bitcoin came out in 2009 and all that kind of stuff. And boy, was it ever downplayed by the powers that be. I mean, it was rat poison squared. It was da 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 da. Now, where are we today? Well, today we're seeing a lot of exchange traded funds being adopted by some of the major financial players. I mean, look at BlackRock. What is it? 9 to 13 trillion assets under management and that type of thing. And so we're seeing that in a powerful, powerful way. And on top of that, okay, who are behind a lot of these, political, the people that are going out there and running for these? Well, it's the lobbyists. The lobbyists. They are pushing for it. They want it. They're moving us into this new system. Zero doubt. What we're seeing right now is the implosion of the current system. I mean, since 1913, Federal Reserve comes in, the value of the dollar has literally collapsed 98+% in terms of its purchasing power. They are inflating it to the high heavens right now, as you mentioned in the beginning there. They're buying up debt like crazy, and on and on and on. So they know that we're transitioning into this new economy. Who benefited the most from the last industrial revolutions that took place? Because this is called the fourth industrial revolution. Well, the ones that benefited the most were the trailblazers and, of course, the pioneers, those willing to risk it at the very beginning. Now, a lot of us in this space, we have done our utmost best to get the word out to as many people who will willingly accept it, in terms of like what is coming down the road, what we see, why we believe that, where we see the world transitioning. And what's interesting is, have we not been proven right? Have we not been proven right? Because we were getting in when they were literally dissing it and destroying it. Now they're adopting it to the point where they are crafting a regulatory framework. And this is being motivated, by the way, guys, on a global level. Augustin Carson, Bank of International Settlements, he came out not too long ago talking about stable coins. And he was encouraging governments around the wide world to develop a regulatory framework around stable coins. And so that's exactly what we're seeing. That is one of the first facets of, preparing, the country and, of course, in the world's framework for the adoption of this space. Now, once we get all of this regulatory clarity in place, which, by the way, I think is going to happen a whole lot faster than what most people think, what's going to happen then? Well, the risk is going to come down. The risk in this space is going to come down. With that, of course, the reward is going to come down. That's why I say those of us that have been willing to step out on the water early on before any of that got out there because of the foresight, probably have the opportunity to see perhaps the greatest wealth transfer in the history of mankind. And so this is where I think this is coming from. I think they are ready to start flipping switches. They are ready to see a framework in place on a global level. They don't kid yourself. They are certainly working hand in glove with other regulatory bodies around the wide world because they want to have a uniform system. That's how I'm kind of thinking about it.
Incredible. Vandell, I'd like to get your thoughts. Vandell and I, you guys got to hear the discussions we have off camera sometime. Oh my God. Vandell, come on. What do you think? Is your microphone working? Oh my God. Here, hold on, hold on.
Yeah.
Okay, Vandell, go to settings and
Yeah. Go
click
Can you
to
on
hear me?
settings.
audio. There we go.
I put it
Sorry
on
about
mute.
that,
I
guys.
apologize. Yeah. So everything David said, 100% accurate. I do agree with him. And the last thing he noted is actually very important for people in this space and retail investors alike, is that as the regulatory clarity and frameworks come in, more regulation, that leads to more elimination of bad actors, more price stability. Therefore, um, the risk will be reduced and the rewards will be reduced. So you can expect the volatility to significantly decrease. And in other words, let's put it in plain English, don't expect to get wealthy later on once the regulations are fully solidified. The opportunity and the rewards won't be the same as now compared to when we do have full regulations and clarity. So the opportunity is now, it's not later, you know. The other thing I did want to add to is in regards to the digital asset crypto market cap space, okay? For the crypto market cap, not too long ago, Brad Garlinghouse, CEO of Ripple, the face of the company, you know, he did make a statement saying that by the end of 2024, he sees the crypto market cap being around 4 or 5 trillion, he said. And I want to explain something to everybody watching that CEOs like Brad Garlinghouse and, the public face of a mega company like Ripple, just so people understand, they're obligated to withhold sensitive information and not disclose everything. They're not allowed to. Okay. So when a public figure like Brad Garlinghouse says that he foresees a $5 trillion crypto market cap, you know, what basically take it with a grain of salt because they can't really tell you everything. And this is standard practice with large corporations and companies when representing the interests of the company publicly. So when he says 5 trillion by the end of 2024, what that means to me is he's being extremely conservative and very careful with the words he's chosen to say publicly. And if somebody asks me, where do we see this going from 2024 to the end of 2025, I think we're going to at least by a minimum double or triple the current market cap. And the point I'm making is that even though we are fans of Ripple, the company, and we own the technology and the protocols, XRP, don't take everything the public faces say at face value. That's what I'm trying to say here, because the market cap will be tremendously greater than whatever they're telling us. So the opportunities are phenomenal now, not when regulation comes in.
Agreed. Very good point you said also. How BlackRock said 3 trill. Brad said 5. And Vandell and I talked about this, and we said way more than 8. Way more than that. So, Edo, what do you think, man?
What do you think?
You guys made great points. This declaration of Brad Garlinghouse, Vandell, I have the opportunity to watch live. He said that at the Paris Blockchain Week. I was actually live streaming when
You were there.
Yeah, I was watching him on the first line of the center stage, which was full, by the way. And well, I agree with mostly everything that you guys said. And I would add something. I think that, not sure if you guys are aware, but I work for a law firm, which happens to be a blockchain related fintech that is located in Lisbon. And just in 2023, we hit a new all-time high for American customers. It's actually located in Portugal, which is a very friendly country in regards of cryptocurrencies, just like Montenegro and some other European countries. And I remember discussing with the senior lawyer of the law firm, and we were talking about why are Americans actually escaping the US in regards to crypto? Why are founders of projects people who want to actually cash out their gains? And we were somehow having a realization that America was losing the battle against Europe in regards to what we call Web 3.0, just like the US was the dominant power for Web 2.0 with the whole Silicon Valley industries, everything located in the United States, Facebook, all these big tech companies. I saw that in the last 3 to 4 years, Europe with MiCA regulation was very advanced in the framework of legislation for cryptocurrencies. And I think right now it might be a turning point, as the name of our new podcast. So it might be a turning point for the US because we see that this election for me is taking the form of a crypto election. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Crypto is at the epicenter of the discussion right now with the all highlights. And that for me is an indicator that we are getting more closer, as you guys pointed out before, to the point where regulation is going to kick in and volatility is going to be substantially lower in regards to what it was in the past. And that means that the opportunity to make gains is also going to decrease. So I think we are on the last moments on the, I don't know, I would not define moments. I cannot really say exactly, but if we put on a timeline, I am sure it's the last moments to jump in crypto right now. So whoever is watching this, I really recommend you to start doing your own research if you're not familiar with crypto. So that is also an indicator that the markets now are much more mature in relation to what it was in the past. So I don't really see any more crypto as this crazy casino as it was in the past. I think it's getting more and more stable. That also diminishes a bit the possibility to make a lot of money on the short term. But I do think that we are still very early compared. Just we have to think beyond just Bitcoin because, as I said multiple times in our live streamings, the time to make substantial gains with Bitcoin, with Ethereum, I think the boat has left the station a long time ago. So you are no longer early on crypto if you're getting on Bitcoin, but you are for sure early if you are getting in assets like XRP, XDC, XLM, HBAR, and all of these assets that be at the core of the new financial system, with Ripple, in my opinion, being somehow the energy that's going to run the new financial system. How do you see that?
Very good point. And, you know, David and we did a phone call yesterday, and I mentioned this to him. I said, I find it the most interesting thing I find about all this is the fact that the convergence of all these timelines are now coming together, right? We know for a fact that the regulatory framework has been in the works for a very long time. I think behind the scenes, though, much of this is already set and done. You know, even the SEC lawsuit, which is obviously a smokescreen at this point, right? So when I was talking to David, I was just explaining that I think it signifies that basically the moment we've been discussing and anticipating is approaching very fast. And like you said, Edo, very good point, that this is now a political discussion, right? It's at the center of it. It's very interesting. Just at the same time, guys, as war is expanding, that means the debt market has to continue to grow, right? Because the debt market is the driver of all of this, right?
All of it.
It's the real driver behind of all the means. So that means they're going to have to pump the prices, asset prices, and that means more distortions of asset prices. And for those who ask, what does it mean to say the distortion of asset prices? Basically, the rich are going to get richer and the poor will get poorer, right? And we all know already, many people will say this in the comments, that the banks are already insolvent. Oh, we already know this, right? But what you don't understand is that they have to continue to devalue the currency in order to issue more debt and prop up the economy and prop up the currency, which makes the central bank even more powerful than people believe. And I find that also to be interestingly because the bridge between what is now failing and something new that is now emerging, right? This new digital financial system that to some degree will be backed by hard assets, which will gradually, I think, eliminate the need for cash while providing some institutions and governments a way to circumvent trade in dollars, not all, right? But that continues the de-dollarization process. And guys, I'm just looking at this from a macro perspective, but then the good news is the digital assets, particularly stable coins, are going to intersect with precious metals. And that's why I'm always going long on hard assets. And I think the convergence is now approaching on a global scale. And again, like we said, the political discussion, it's around the crypto market. And last thing, if I can mention, is just that the inflation is having its impact on the people, right? The middle class, they're suffering more than ever. And again, this is to reiterate what my brother said as well, is why we urge you, not financial advice, but urge you to position yourself wisely for the changes that are now accelerating, right? And I think those who truly understand what this digital system is aiming to do, in my opinion, and we talk about this privately because people disagree, is that it's designed to solidify their control, the central banks. And it's very possible that we may see a central bank digital currency if the narrative fits. And it looks like it is fitting, especially in the context of a failing banking system, the global climate agenda. You guys know what I'm talking about. And given the current space of expanding wars, I think it all ties in together, and you see this problem, reaction, solution setup. So let's discuss this further. David, what do you think?
Well, with central bank digital currencies, I think they're inevitability. I know that it's not something a lot of the people in this community want, or even, they're certainly saying that, hey, look, it's not where they see things going. A lot of people look at the XRP ledger and XRP as kind of like an exit to CBDCs. But let's remember something. We've got an organization that, where the founders of XRP are involved with, that are out there, and we're talking about Ripple, that is literally working on developing the infrastructure for the evolution of money in developing central bank digital currencies for nation states. I mean, that is a fact. That's what's going on. And when you see the movement around the wide world, and in fact, you can go to the atlanticcouncil.org. It's a website where they have on there a CBDC tracker for most every nation on earth in terms of their development towards a CBDC. And I'll tell you what, guys, 98% of nations are developing them. Some have even launched them. Certainly the United States, Canada, the UK, Australia, the Commonwealth countries around the world. You got the UAE, you got Saudi Arabia, you got all of them. They're all in the race to develop their central bank digital currencies. And I suspect that most of them already have the infrastructure in place. It's just, do they have the political will to push it through just yet? And political will is interesting because it changes with sentiment, doesn't it? And I think that they could put us in a position when you're talking about central bank control, central bank direction, the central banks. A lot of folks will not think about this in this capacity, but central banks control a whole lot more than what most people think. It's not just the monetary instrument or the money supply. In fact, I would suspect, and we've talked about this at length before, but the military complex is there to protect the central banks and the way in which, they actually, control our economy. And when you talk about the central banks, issuing currency and things like that, every time they do that, they're just creating debt. It's all about debt. It is about the debt market, and the borrower is slave to the lender. That's the way it's always been. That's the way it always will be. Now, we are now in a situation where we're watching inflation in the Western world really, really have impact right on the ground with everyday people. In fact, I was reading an article this morning. I had it talked about it in my own coffee chat video this morning, how 93% of stocks that are owned in United States equities are owned by 10% of the population. And in fact, what they were saying is that 40% of American households right now are the working poor. The working poor. And why are they the working poor? Because the purchasing power of the dollars in their pockets is being absolutely destroyed by the central banks, right? Because that's where they reach into your pockets. They start pulling money out by the fistfuls by destroying the purchasing power. And how are they doing that? By inflating the currency. It's a race to inflate. That is the only thing the central bank can do. But in doing that, what do? They consolidate power, they consolidate control, they literally have, basically the economy by the throat. And if they have the gumption to issue a CBDC, I don't care what the administration is, it's going to happen. That's what I believe. It's just, how is it going to come about? In what way? In certain political jurisdictions around the world, like as in China, we know it's going to be absolutely tied to a social credit score. which is going to be about, manipulating, behavior, isn't it? Because you're going to reward certain financial behavior and you're going to punish other certain financial behavior, things that we absolutely do not want to see. But it seems like the world is moving more and more and more towards that, whether we like it or not. And one of the big iterations of that idea is the whole concept of universal basic income.
Right.
Universal
selling
basic
point.
income is probably one of the most lethal things to a free market economy and society. And there's lots of people out there that will support UBI because, hey, look, I'm going to get a check back from the government. They don't realize they have just opted into a form of slavery that they will never be able to back out of. And it's one of the things that, we would probably want to absolutely avoid if at all possible. But those are the dangers that are coming down the road. And remember this too. When you're talking about a CBDC, you're talking about a closed ledger system.
Yep.
It's not a open ledger system. And of course, there's going to be various CBDCs around the world, Well, there are going to be bridge assets that are going to, interoperate between those. Stable coins can form that, certainly XRP, XLM, Aljarrah Hashgraph, that kind of thing. But this whole concept of, central bank digital currencies becoming a reality, I think it's an inevitability. I guess that's how I would say it. It's inevitability.
Very interesting take. Vandell, you and I, we've discussed this so many times. I would like people to hear your honest and unfiltered perspective.
Yeah, well, first of all, on central bank digital currencies, as David said, it's a fact that approximately 90 or even higher than 90% of all nations around the globe are already working and developing one or already have one. So that's a fact. Your opinion is irrelevant at this point because that information is out there. And David's right. So that's something to consider. Whether it happens or not, only God knows. But it's already in the works as we speak by the column elites, central bankers, BlackRock, the financial institutions that control the money, that control the world. They're already doing that. They have a global governance agenda. Okay. This ties into the CBDCs, tokenization of all assets, financial, humans, nature, you name it, and digital IDs. So, and this is this ties into the green agenda as well. But what's interesting is a lot of people in the space, very intelligent people, they believe and they say that the CBDC thing, the people will never allow it. Well, tell me how they fooled 70.6% of the world's population in 2020. They fooled the people. So there you go. I mean, that was just a scare. It's not even real. Imagine if something real happened that's obviously orchestrated. Yes, 95% of the people will fall for it. Okay? That's the
They'll beg
reality
for it.
because they are masters of human psychology. People think these bankers and elites are incompetent. No. You don't know how they work. They are years ahead. They have the best people working for them. They understand human psychology. They know exactly what they're doing and what they're saying. And they think in long-term horizons. They don't think like a lot of crypto investors, oh, I'm going to make money overnight, 1 year, 2 years. No, these people plan decades in advance,
Right.
years in advance. So the point I was making is that people fell for their foolish scam in 2020. 70% of the world's population got it. Okay. So yeah, there you have it. History is right there in the making, And the other thing is I want to mention that so the initiative is directly linked to the Bank for International Settlements. A lot of people don't know this, but the BIS, often referred to as the central bank of central banks, is actively working on tokenization of financial assets. And they're actually developing a permissioned and private blockchain where all assets are tokenized. So that's a fact. They're already working on that. So it's just interesting because it's not an opinion. These are facts, and we look at the data and we need to share it and have these discussions. It's important. It's important. So,
Mhm.
Ito, what do you think, brother?
Well, Edo, would love to hear your take on this. We've discussed this thoroughly too. So,
Yeah, I think you know my opinion. Even though I love the utopian thoughts that no CBDCs are not coming, and a lot of people are celebrating. I think it's called HRF 203, the bill that
The bill.
has banned the Surveillance Act in regards to CBDCs. As much as I love the idea, as you pointed out very well, Vandell, what happened in 2019 and 2020, I think there's no doubt that central banks are the head of the snake of the financial system, and they are deceiving the masses. And the worst part of that is that most people, I would say that I think you said 70%, not really updated with statistics, but if I remember, back in 2020, virtually everyone was falling for what they have orchestrated, and every single nation in the world has colluded. Doesn't matter if we're talking about China, Russia, United States, South American countries. How
Mhm.
ironic is that the entire world has conducted the situation in the exact same way. Now, if I could ask questions before and say, yeah, it's a conspiracy theory that they can collude, I think after 2020, I had all the answers that I needed, and I started to
Mhm.
see the world in a very different way.
mhm,
Mhm.
So I have said in our previous podcast, Versan, that we discussed about CBDCs, that how could they say that CBDCs are not coming when actually when you exit the comfort of your home, like I did, I go to the Paris Blockchain Week, most important cryptocurrencies event in Europe. You have all the global leaders. You have most important blockchain companies such as Ripple, Stellar, Hedera from HBAR. You have USDC. You have Circle. Basically, you have the most important players. They are all there. They are present there. And most of the discussions, guess what is the main topic of them? It's about CBDCs.
right.
I've spoken personally to, I cannot give names here, but very influential people, because the people who attend the Paris Blockchain Week is not average Joe. I'm talking here about a very selected event. So I got the opportunity to talk privately to
Mhm.
people. And I can tell, I cannot give names, not even nations, but there are nations that have the CBDC is ready. It's not even they
Mhm,
are developing, they have it fully
Yep.
ready. I have seen
Totally.
some of the
Totally.
technology. And I love what Vandell said about tokenization. Everything is being tokenized.
Yep.
And as much as I was excited to be on the Paris Blockchain Week, something inside myself was giving me like some goosebumps when I was seeing some sort of things like tokenization of water. We have companies that are already working on tokenization of water. Well, they
mhm,
are tokenizing everything. They are tokenizing solar panels. I wanted to do a joke to a friend of mine. Was that I say in a bit they're going to be tokenizing air, and actually they are doing that with carbon
Right.
credits as well. So
Mhm.
they have many mechanisms of controlling the population.
mhm,
What I do think is that in the end of the day, we all going to have a choice. I think it's really a matter of choice, and that's somehow how the elites operate. They usually
Yep.
give us a choice. If you really, nobody actually forced you to do anything. 2019, yes, they gave you
Mhm.
fines, but they didn't come inside your house, took you, and forced you to do anything that you didn't want to do. Now, of course, they use the deception mechanisms to actually fool the masses, to actually manipulate the minds. They put things in plain sight. That's how they have been running most of the countries for centuries. That's not something that started recently. That's a
Right.
long-term plan. I do believe that also Ripple is a long-term military plan, and I have wrote several threads about how we can trace down the history of Ripple back to 1992, actually way before, with Ryan Fugger, which happens to
Yeah.
be, yeah, I have made several comments on that, but to not switch the focus.
Yeah.
I think that as much exciting as it sounds at this utopian world that no, they're not going to implement CBDCs. Unfortunately, I don't think that's the reality. I just think that we all have a choice to not be enslaved by technology. And with AI, it's also, we didn't mention AI on this conversation yet, but surely that's going to have a role in taking people's jobs. So AI is going to replace a lot of jobs out there. It's the technical, it's not the industrial revolution, it's the technological revolution. I think I might call it like that. And that's what it comes for what David says before with the universal income. People
Mhm.
not going to have a search of income, and these people are going to have no choice but to actually embrace the government as the big daddy. That's what they have
Mhm.
been
Big Daddy.
planning in the last decades.
Yep. Yep.
And
George
it's all
Orwell, 1984.
and
Yeah.
it's a huge plan. It goes even beyond just the economical section. It goes for the
Mhm.
destruction of the family structure, which, by the way, is the only way to have to actually execute a long-term plan. If you don't have a family, you are more like also with the high divorce rates, and all of that is all combined for actually throwing people into misery, which is happening live. Inflation is out of control, and not only in the United States, guys. I am in Europe. Just this year, I have been to around 10 countries, and everybody tells me the same thing. It looks like a copy and paste. I go to one country, I go to Italy, I go to
Mm,
Greece.
mm,
It's a copy and paste. Everybody complains about the same things. Oh,
Mhm.
have you checked the price? Everything's going up. We can't afford anything anymore. Doesn't matter
mhm,
if you go for a country like go to the north of Italy where salary wage national wage is actually way above countries like Spain,
mm,
Portugal, and Greece. But everybody complains about the same thing. People can't afford homes anymore. They have to take loans to the banks. They can't even pay the loans. So the situation is actually escalating so quickly that I would say
mhm,
that there is no turning point for CBDCs. It's actually going to happen. The only
mhm,
conclusion that I have to give is that in the end of the day, we are going to have a choice, and you have to make your choice. Do you want to be enslaved by the government, or you want to somehow become your own banking system and operate independently from the government,
mhm,
utilizing hard assets, utilizing digital assets, gold, silver, precious metals in general, owning your own real estate? And I think that's the way. Land, food, water, everything that
mhm.
Person talks about.
You know, we're
And
going to have, I am so excited that we started this thing because, guys, each of you is a wealth of knowledge. And what you said, Edo, is there's just so much to break down. Same thing with David and my
Mhm,
brother. You know, we can go in circles with these conversations and really break things down. It's very interesting. But, you know, one thing you said, Edo, is that they have this ready. And we kind of all talked about this very briefly. This is ready for deployment. They're just waiting
mhm,
for some crisis to happen, right? Who knows
mhm.
what it can be?
Yeah.
It's no doubt going to be orchestrated. And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but there are a lot of people now, and even in the comments, saying that talking about the Fit 21 bill, right? And the crypto bill
Mm,
that just came out, introduced by Majority Whip Congressman Tom Emmer. And again, he's been very vocal in the digital asset space for a long time. I've been following him, but that's kind of his pitch, right? What I
mhm,
find interesting is that what you said, David, earlier, you said that this was a bipartisan vote. And let me tell you
mhm,
something for those who understand how the political arena really works. The term bipartisan, in my opinion, it confirms that political figures give their vote and opinion to the highest bidder. And that's why Democrats and Republicans went on this together. If you
mhm,
actually understand how the political system works, you know that these people are owned and operated by the central banks, right? And some people will call them lobbyists, but it really doesn't matter because it's, again, the institutions that have already consolidated everything, and they're the ones really running the show. Hence, to all the things we just discussed, the copy and paste in every country, you're seeing the same crap over and over, right? And we can also confirm just by looking at history that they play both sides. And that
mhm,
means we have to understand that these politicians really don't have a choice but to follow the rules that are set from above. So you're going to hear politicians say that a central bank digital currency will not happen yet. Everything is being put together for it to happen, right?
yeah.
And I understand, you know, the sentiment. Believe me, I'm very optimistic and hopeful too. And many people will attack me for this, saying that Versan, you're so doom and gloom. That's not true. You know, not at all. I'm the farthest thing from it. And I believe that this should be a decentralized system. However, just be mindful of the current situation and, again, the impoverishment of an entire class of people. That is not an accident. And it's very alarming to convince there are people in the space convinced themselves that, this is merely speculation. The idea that a debt jubilee is going to come and save you. Let me explain something. All right. You have to change your habits. You have to adapt to the current situation and not just believe in false hope. There are people out there I know who are not taking action because they believe that they're going to be rescued. I disagree. I continuously believe that investing in the technologies can make you very wealthy. All right. And one person stated in here, XRP is basically being your own bank. With XRP, for instance, you are a liquidity provider. You don't need intermediaries. You don't need the banks. You are the liquidity provider. You essentially do become your own central bank, right? I think it's important also to own physical assets. Despite the fact that everything will be tokenized. And people have said, Verson, you don't need physical assets. It's going to be tokenized. Well, I don't give a shit, right? In fact, the fact that it's going to be tokenized, you're better off holding physical assets because everything is going to be tokenized. The saying, own nothing and be happy, is gradually becoming a reality. And this is no different from a problem, reaction, solution scenario. And that's been their motto from the very beginning. So if people do their research into history and understand how things have played out and transpired over this time, you're going to know that the powers that be, they want to take away your freedom, your sovereignty, and they're going to sell you the belief that they're coming to fix everything. Beware of a wolf in sheep's clothing, right? David, what do you think?
Well, one of the most dangerous words, I think, I'm not sure if it was Reagan or somebody said this, is the most ominous words is we're the government and we're here to help.
Yeah, that's a funny one.
Right. Those when you hear that, turn and run. But basically, I agree with you 100%. I think that I think it's an illusion to believe that there will be no payday if there is debt forgiveness. If there is a debt forgiveness, because I think that when you think about in this capacity, look, in the last Great Depression, which, we back in the late 1920s, 1930s in there, one of the biggest things that they thought up of how to get out of it was the whole planned obsolescence kind of idea, where from a legislative standpoint, certain things you'd have to redo, you'd have to go into again. And then of course that got into the manufacturing world where we see that right now, the whole planned obsolescence, things that are built to break down. But the whole idea behind that was a dependency on the state. That was the whole idea. This is where the whole by 2030, you'll own nothing and be happy is because, Big Brother will take care of you. This is the whole idea that, we want this equalization around the wide world where everybody has a, well, we've tried that before. And how many millions of people lost their lives in the pursuit of this whole idea? In the revolutions that the 20th century saw, trying to implement this kind of philosophy that, we all can be an egalitarian society where everyone's brought up to a certain standard of living. Well, human nature doesn't work that way. I'm just sorry to say. Human nature does not work that way. And this is it's like going against our own human, but they know that, but I believe that they'll bring society to a place where they will beg for it. Now, Ito is right. We will have a choice, but that does not mean there won't be a payday. For instance, you can go ahead with the whole debt forgiveness idea, and acquiesce to the whole UBI and everything like that, but you will have lost your autonomy, you will have lost your liberty, you will have lost your privacy. I think it's going to cost people a whole lot more. This golden goose kind of idea that all your debt's going to be wiped out and it's going to be pure utopia and all the bad guys are going to, be dealt with and all the white hats are going to win. It just does not line up with my understanding of, what the future might be. Based, like, I'm also coming from it from a different perspective as well. A lot of the things that we're seeing unfold today, it is uncanny how precise they are to a lot of things that we know from a scriptural point of view. I'm just going to say it like that. Whether you adopt that philosophy or not. I used to work in the underground economy as an investigator. So I investigated and trained people how to go out and do the investigations, working in a federal officer position with the tax department in Canada, Canada Revenue Agency, CRA, and stuff like that. Now, when I was doing that, I used to always think, how are they going to enforce this whole idea of a beast system where, you could not buy or sell or this or that, didn't matter what your position was, rich, slave, or whatever. You used to think because there's always been an underground economy. There's always been a black market. Well, now tie that into what Vandell brought up of decentralized identity. Now, Australia has just recently passed decentralized ID. Now, decentralized ID is not just, smart ID or whatever. It's going to be tied, number one, to CBDCs, right? As they're issued, your account's there, but it's also going to be tied to your identity, which, by the way, is being tokenized. Your idea is you are being tokenized. Well, it's going to be fairly difficult to do almost anything in an environment like that financially, by if you're going to acquiesce to that system. You need to be making your choice now. From what Ito said, you'll have a choice. The choice is you need to make it now. And what you were saying there about becoming your own bank, kind of getting out of the whole, or building and a possibility to vacate this whole system. Well, how are you going to go about doing that? Real world assets that are going to be worth something. And yes, they are tokenizing gold, silver, and that. You got the DMCC in Dubai already tokenizing gold. Gold is being tokenized elsewhere. But to me, they're just a kind of like an iteration of an ETF for gold. I'd rather, if I'm going to hold it, I want the physical right there in the palm of my hand, because, that's really what it boils down to. And so, I'm always out there encouraging people, prepare now. If you're going to be a victim to this inflationary environment, when it does get to really ultra inflation, I do believe we are going to face hyperinflation at some point, then why not prepare now? What hurts you by putting a little food insurance away, by putting a little extra this away, by holding on to things, the assets that are going to, by self-custodying your digital assets in ways in which, you could, protect yourself, and at least give yourself that opportunity, to transact outside of an environment where every step you take is being monitored and controlled. So for me, I do believe that those days are coming. Just that's human nature. I do not believe that, the forgiveness of debt is going to be without a payday. I think there will be a cost there. And I think Ito really eloquently brought that out, that, you will have a choice, but it's going to cost you something. It's going to cost you something. Look, when I was in Canada and we were facing this whole deal in 2020, well, this is what the government there did. They said, oh, well, you can't fly. Oh, you're going to take the train? Nope, not taking the train. Oh, instead, you're going to take the bus? Nope, you're not taking the bus. There were people that literally could not even go to work unless they had a vehicle of their own. Why? Because they couldn't take public transportation unless they were vaccinated to get there. Can you imagine that? Now,
No jab, no job.
yeah, you have no job. I mean, that if oh yeah, you have a choice. We're not forcing it on anybody. We're just going to take away your ability to provide for yourself if you don't. And those are the kind of decisions I think that people are going to be faced with. And so this is where I agree. You're right, Versan. You have to be at a place where you're taking custody of your own financial future, being your own bank, if you want to call it that, however you want to define that, but protecting yourself. And Ito brought up a good point, your family. We are nothing without one another. We are nothing without one another. And isn't it interesting how they're trying to isolate us from one another more and more and more and more, even into the structure of the home. So that's how I kind of think about that.
It's a divide and conquer strategy.
Divide and conquer.
What do you think?
Yeah, honestly, I agree with everything. I know David and I, we, as well as you, Verson, we talk a lot about these scenarios and these topics constantly over the phone and in person. And, in regards to owning physical, tangible assets, whatever, land, real estate, art, gold, precious metals, as we're moving into a more tokenized digital world, that actually creates more abundance in the digital world and more scarcity in the physical world. And scarcity equals higher demand and equals more value. So I am going to continue to accumulate physical, tangible assets, gold and silver, because if it was actually losing its value, you'd see central banks getting rid of their gold. Okay. Until the day they put on the news that central banks are dumping all their gold and burning it all or melting it, then I'll go full digital.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
And guess what?
Yeah, exactly.
When they put down the news, it could be bullshit too.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll be
that's
buying
true.
the
That's
dip.
right.
Right?
Yeah, that's for sure.
They never tell you the truth. Edo, what do you
Mm.
think?
Yeah, you guys made great ponderations. I agree. We can't really trust what they putting in the news, but we have been actually watching what they are doing behind the scenes. And what they have been doing behind the scenes is accumulating, contrary to what the central banks did in the early 2000s, they actually been the greatest buyers of gold. So that's definitely an indicator that we're going to see scarcity for, uh,
Hmm.
I forgot the English word now, precious metals. Sometimes I have this
Yeah, yeah.
mental breakdowns. I have to speak here Greek. Then I was in Italy last week, and it's like just like crazy. Someone says here gold, silver manipulated. That's a fact, you know.
Yeah.
And I think this whole situation involves even, I say that especially in the United States, where I call it the demoralization process. So individuals have been demoralized to such a degree that nowadays you can present to them real information and you can present to them something that is actually not real information. They can't really distinguish anything anymore because
Mhm.
individuals have been highly not only indoctrinated. This is a process that has been completed. I would say the process is completed, and not even in their best scenario they could predict 20 years ago that they would take the young generation to such a degree, especially, and I don't say this in an offensive way, but especially to the degree that they have done, especially in America, because I have been there and I was actually surprised for the younger generations in the United States. So it basically presents them with factual information they are not able to distinguish anymore. So that's very concerning, and that's part of the process of CBDCs. I think we can't separate. It's all related. The destruction of the nuclear family, the demoralization of individuals. And in the end of the day, I totally agree with what David said, that yes, they kind of forced you in 2020. Like some people actually lost the means to make money. So it's more easy to me because I don't have children. I don't have three, four, five children to feed. I'm not married
Right.
yet, even though I plan in the future. But it's more easy for me to say no than it is to a 40 or 50 years old man that has been working on his job to feed his family, and then you actually removing his means to make money. Just like in Italy, they were actually placing fines on the unvaccinated people. So yeah, even though I believe we have a choice, but it's gonna come with a price,
Yeah.
and we
Mhm.
don't really yet know exactly at what price it's going to be. That's why I
Yeah.
think right now is the most important, the most crucial moment to prepare yourself. And as
Mhm.
much as I hate the idea of CBDCs, but there is a reason why I spend daily hours researching about CBDCs. I want to
Mhm.
know my enemy. I want to really understand how this technology is going to play out. And this sentence I got from Versan, this is a multidimensional chess game. We don't really have all the answers, but I think that's fundamental right now that we are doing this research. We're having these open discussions. We're having the great audience here that also provides with great insights. And that makes us to actually understand CBDCs. And many people, especially the Bitcoin maxis, which they sorry to say that, but it became a cult, meaning that they
Mhm.
still have this dystopian thing that they believe Bitcoin is going to replace the banks. And I think it's not about that. I think it's about understand the enemy so that we can all be prepared, because
Hmm.
regardless of how I feel about CBDCs, they are coming. The
Yeah.
technology is ready, the central banks have decided, all the big tech companies, they are all aligned towards
Mhm.
CBDCs. If anyone has any doubt, I encourage you to actually close your computer and go to any mainstream or any relevant cryptocurrency event. You can go to Ripple Swell, you can go to Paris Blockchain Week. I'm sure you guys have some also in the United States. And you're going to see that the whole point of the discussions right now is about CBDCs. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, that's the reality, and I think that's why it's extremely important for us to have these conversations right now, so we are all prepared for what's coming.
Of
Yeah,
course.
agreed.
There are a few things in what you said there. Community is probably the most important thing, especially as we're being divided and conquered at the same time, and their introduction of this new system, right? It's all digital. So, in my opinion, that's a slave system. So, somebody put in the comments here earlier, I thought it was genius. I just didn't want to cut anyone off. And he said, we are embracing our own doom. And to a degree, I understand where he's coming from. And this is kind of like what we allude to some of these discussions. But I can tell you a few things. There's no doubt that the new monetary system that we see coming is going to be backed by hard assets, right? Which
Yeah.
explains again, like my brother said, why the banks and the financial institutions are buying hard assets. And at the same time, what are they doing? They're adopting Ripple's technology for tokenization and other things, which leverages XRP for the value transfer. So the fact that the institutions driving us quietly, steering us towards a new gold standard, if you will, that's not speculation anymore. It's a reality in the making. Sorry,
Totally.
guys. And I've been emphasizing this now for years is with my brother is that the decline of the world's reserve currency is accelerating, right? And because of that acceleration of its decline is nations will have no choice but to seek refuge in hard assets. And gold is one of them. And then when you emerging technologies like XRP and even XLM, the stable coins are going to pave the way. So I just keep telling people, brace yourselves for the inevitable shift. It's coming, you know? So
Mhm.
yeah, those are my
I think
final
that's very
thoughts, guys.
true.
Anyone want to jump in?
Well, the one
Go ahead.
final thing I would talk about is when you're talking about the, for people preparing themselves for the shift and everything like this, is to look at, what, like this bill, this Financial Innovation and Technology for the 21st Century Act is a massive, massive, move in the direction of the implementation of all of this. And to see the support that it got, on both sides of the aisle was phenomenal. And in fact, one of the biggest challenges, of course, this space has faced has been with the whole SEC, which to me, I really do believe this whole case is a dog and pony show right from day one. I've always thought that it just seemed to align perfectly with, the way in which these guys seem to plan stuff out and things like that. Ripple's coming into the SEC for 8 years straight, being as transparent as can be. And on the last day that Jay Clayton is the director of the SEC, commissioner of the SEC, the lawsuit gets dropped. Bill Hinman, the chairman over the enforcement section, while he resigns, they all end up in law firms that are, really backing the Ethereum network and all this kind of stuff. And you just see all the things that would merit at least would merit some kind of investigation. It really, I think this all plays into the whole plan that they've had all along. And with this new legislation, what they're really laying there is the groundwork within the United States on how these things will be governed. Most of them are going to go under the CFTC, for the Commodities Futures, Trading Commission and whatever, that they will actually have jurisdiction over it. Well, once that happens, boy, does that really change the playing field in a powerful way. And you're going to see the large term institutions that have been accused. By the way, I'm going to throw this out there. If anyone thinks that when you're watching the billions of dollars of transactional volume per day, and a lot of the, whether it's Aljarrah Hashgraph, XLM, XRP, you name it, all that is not retail. Let's be honest. That is institutional buying and selling on a massive, massive level. And think about this too, in terms of XRP, 70% of all the XRP wallets hold less than 500 XRP. That is staggering, So, when you think about that, it is big time institutions already that are moving this market, and they've been doing these things with intention, rolling it out with intention. I certainly do believe that we are going to see this framework. It would not surprise me to see it pass through the Senate. I think it's going to get passed. I think it's going to be law. And when that happens, I do believe that, getting back to what we started right in the very beginning, I do believe that we are going to see, and like what Vandell says, the risk is going to come down. These things will probably get their own indices. They're going to be traded. You're going to see the 5, 6, 7% raises, drops, and all that. The opportunity is going to be gone to protect yourself and preserve yourself going forward into this future. It's going to be a missed opportunity for many, many people, and they will have to almost acquiesce to the current system or to the system that's coming, because the current system is going to be totally imploded.
Yeah.
And the introduction of CBDCs and all those things. So now is your time, like Ado is saying, now is your time to prepare. This is the day of your opportunity. And we're out there, we're encouraging people to go out there and do their own research, to really study this self. We've pointed them in the direction of where to find the information, go through it, because look, the bottom line is this: if any of us could talk any of these people into it, then you can be assured someone else can just talk them right out of it. They have got the answers that we find for ourselves. I say this a lot, are the ones I believe people will trust the most. Well, the information's out there, but critical thinking has, as Edo, you were saying there, critical thinking has just dropped. They don't encourage debate. They don't encourage anything. People will not do their own critical thinking, and there's going to be a big time consequence for that. That is genuinely how I think. But I do think this new piece of legislation is a big tell, and it's a big deal.
Thank you for saying that, by the way, David. Critical thinking. Vandell, I know you had something to take care of, so do you want to put any last words?
Yeah, listen, gentlemen, everybody watching, I actually have to leave, but I'm actually looking very forward to this conversation coming week, next week. But I do want to say one last thing before I go. First of all, I love all you guys. Brilliant. I'm so happy that we can collectively do this and have these unconventional discussions without the BS and the fake news, but really be open, because these are the meaningful conversations that need to be had.
Yeah.
Okay. And I just want to say the crash is coming. Okay. In 2009, G20 leaders and Barack Obama actually formed the Financial Stability Board. Okay. And the former chair was, Mark Carney. Okay. Now, interestingly, he is head of climate change for the United Nations, and they're working on tokenization. So I hope people see the connections by now, that this has been planned out for a long time now. Right now, they're just waiting for the bubble to pop so they could flip the switch, and problem, reaction, solution. But listen, you guys, I have to go, but I'll speak to all of you later, okay? And looking forward to our next call again.
Thank you, Vandell.
Vandell. Thanks. And I'll talk to you later on, all right?
I'll talk to you later.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Vandell.
Swan.
Has been a pleasure.
Always, man. Always. I'm looking forward to our next call.
We'll see you later, Vandell. You can just, yeah. Well, gentlemen, any last words? My final thought to the community is community. We need more community, right? I think we really covered a lot. And again, we're going to do this discussion next Monday. We'll try to keep it consistent. But the fact that we can get the four of us here to have these diverse perspectives and opinions, even though we really understand things, in my opinion, on another level, like we could see through all the divide and conquer strategies and all the bullshit that's in this area, in this space, just don't rely that somebody's going to come and fix everything for you. I think people do need to change their habits. They need to adopt to the current landscape and what's coming, right? So hard assets, digital assets, of course, you want to invest in this infrastructure, but also try to build a community if you can, because that's, I think, how we're going to beat this game, right? There's too much division.
Yeah.
Anyways, guys,